So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the bandwidth. So happy to have you here again with us. Today's topic is how to prepare for an on camera interview. I'm your host, Rosie. Thanks again for tuning in. Some real quick housekeeping items. Please engage with us. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. We will get to them during the conversation and also during the chat. If you're not subscribed to our channel, we ask that you subscribe, click that thumbs up, and hit the notification bell. Ask your, oh Lord, Jesus, sorry, comment your biggest takeaway. Lord, what is wrong with me today? Lord, comment your biggest takeaway. And if you know one person that could benefit from this live, please share it with them. Follow us on Facebook at Rosie Faulkner, at IG Faulkner_Rosie. And if you are ready to go live, sign up to get my 3 must-have tools, and the link will be below. So let's get started, you guys. I also want to thank the Style True team for putting this show together. Again, the title of this show is How to Prepare for an On-Camera Interview. Our featured guest is Leslie Quander Woodridge. She's a writer, editor, speaker, and coach. Hopefully I said her name right. If not, she will correct me when she come on. She's a writer, editor, speaker, and coach. Her work has reached tens of millions of readers, and she is the senior editor of Sisters from AARP. Welcome, Leslie, to the bandwidth.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. And actually, you almost got it. It's a hard last name. So I'm Leslie Quander Woodridge. Most people know me as Leslie Quander, though. So nice to see you. This is going to be fun.
Yes, can't wait to dive in. I know I gave a brief description of your background. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, so like you said, I'm a writer, editor, speaker, and I also do some coaching. So basically what that means is that I do writing for outlets like Business Insider. I'm a contributor actually, and I do a lot of personal finance there. I've also contributed to Men's Health, doing dating and health, obviously, because they're a really great site for that. And then I also write about cryptocurrency a lot, which is really cool, which we will not talk about, but I have done a lot on that. And I'm also an editor. So I've been a magazine editor in the past, which is how I've ended up doing on-camera interviews, being a guest. And then I'm also a person who does interviews. So I interview people for a living, basically. So I love this topic because it's nice for me to be in the hot seat instead of me asking all the questions. I love when people, ask me questions occasionally. I have things to say. So the website where I'm an editor is Celebrating Black Women. But I will say, I always give this disclaimer when I do these events that I'm only representing myself. I'm not representing any of my clients or anywhere I worked, but that experience does very much influence what I know about the topic. And so I'm really excited to share what I know and hopefully encourage people like, yes, you can do this. It just takes some preparation. This is a perfect topic. You just need to prepare yourself and then you'll be good to go. So I'm excited to hop right in with you. And one more thing. I do also do some coaching. So when I said I do writing coaching, like for people who want to work with the media or pitch media, I do that. And I've kind of prepped people for media interviews in the past. So this is like right in my wheelhouse. I'm super glad to be here. Thank you.
Yes, look, just to circle back, we may have to have you back on to talk about crypto. That is a hot topic, but yes.
Okay, yeah, let me know. I have a lot to say about that.
Yes. So let's just dive right in. So why is it essential to familiarize yourself with the topic if you are a guest?
Right. So you want to I think ideally, this is a relationship, right? Like you and I are just having a conversation. And I think that's something really important to remember about interviews in general is that they are conversations, but you are on the record, right? So you want to be able to prepare for that. You want to know what you're going to say. You want to have like sort of a framework. I don't think you necessarily need to write out what you're going to say unless it like helps you kind of learn and go over it. Because sometimes if you're doing an interview, it might be about, for example, like a really complicated topic, like you might have to refer to numbers or something. So in that case, you want to write it out. But if it's something like this, like how you and I are talking about something I do all the time, you just want to have like a few points in mind when you show up and then kind of let the conversation unfold depending on the time allotted and the goals, right? Because some interviews are very short and some interviews are longer. And so you're going to prepare for those probably a little bit differently.
Yeah. So as far as goals, so would you suggest talking to the person before that you're going to be a guest on their show to figure out what you can highlight or your expertise or how that could contribute to what they're talking about or what their whole topic is about for the show?
Yeah, and you know what? That is a very good question, Rosie, because I do want to say at the top of this, like every opportunity is probably not for you. And I just want to confirm for people, like it's really important to have an attitude of abundance about this kind of thing, because what you don't want to have happen is to accept an interview opportunity that's outside of your scope, that's outside of your expertise, that's outside of your goals, and then set yourself up for not a great experience for you or the interviewer, right? So I definitely recommend, if someone like me calls you, I'm like, hey, this is Leslie. I would love to interview for you for XYZ thing, whether it's on camera or not, but especially important if you're on camera. I shouldn't say especially, but really important if you're on camera because it's filming, it's live. You don't necessarily get any takebacks, right? So it is very important to find out what they want to talk to you about. And to really make sure that this is within your area of expertise. So I will say I appreciate you, Rosie, for posting this on your Instagram. And I'm on Instagram too. So yes, we're following each other now. So this is cool. But I think it's really, really important to find out what the goal is for them. And then to make sure that that aligns with your goals, whether you're speaking as, for yourself, like I am, whether it's for a brand, whether you're speaking on behalf of a company, whether it's a crisis communication situation, like you really want to know what they want to know to make sure that it aligns with what you can offer. And, I will give a caveat and then kick it back to you because we talked about this a little bit. So we will tell people kind of what it's about, but, interviews do not follow a script. So you can sort of know what's going to happen and then it could kind of change in the middle of it. You could be talking like you could throw me an interesting question, Rosie, that I have no idea what you're going to ask me. So that happens, but you do want to have an idea of the goals. And I would add to kind of do some research on the outlet. Like make sure it's an outlet that you want to talk to. Make sure it's a personality or a host or a journalist that, again, is in alignment with what you can do and what your goals are. And if not, again, you prepare for those a little bit differently. But I want to get back to you in case you have a follow-up for me.
No, you are very on point with that. I just wanted to add that, a lot of people when they first start off, they get so excited, that somebody has contacted me and they don't, take the time to see if it aligns with their mission and their values because, honestly, sometimes they just want to get that experience of interviewing and being out there, especially if someone like you contact them, legitimate and like, oh my God, but they don't want to say, oh, this may not be in my wheelhouse. So what do you say about that? Just still decline or what would you say?
So that's a great question. And I actually do agree with you on that as well, that you can get so excited, especially being new, that you're just like, yes, right? And that happens in life, right? Somebody might bring you dessert and you're like, yes, before you even bother to be like, wait, is this something I should be eating? So I do think, in business, it's important to be intentional. I think if it's something not in your wheelhouse, and I'm saying this now as the person interviewer, right? I'm putting that hat on. If it's something not in your wheelhouse, I would rather know, right? Because I don't want to go on camera with you and have it be like a horrible, awful interview for me and for you. Like, I would rather you just tell me like, hey, Leslie, you know what? I really appreciate you thinking of me, but I don't think I'm the best person for this interview. Please keep me in mind for other things on topic A, B, and C, which I am fully prepared to talk about. You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's fine. Like, I respect you, we respect you for letting us know. Because while reporters or whoever it is might think that they know you the best, right? And so if this is something you can and cannot do. That said, I will say if it's something that you probably can do, if it's something that you're really knowledgeable about and it's really just butterflies, it might be worth it to go ahead and try it, right? Because it's like at some point you're going to have to start. Hopefully you start with like a kind person. Hopefully you start with an objective person who doesn't have an agenda. And that's where that research goes in of like making sure that it feels like a good fit for you. But if it's something you can do and you're just scared, attempt it, right? If it's something that is absolutely a no, just politely decline and let them know what you are able to speak on. And hopefully you'll keep that relationship going and you'll have another opportunity.
I so agree with you. To just decline and keep that communication going, because who knows when they can circle back and get to you with something that you are expert on. So I so agree. Now, would that be the same if you are the interviewee, as far as familiarizing yourself with the topic?
So you're saying if I am being interviewed or if I'm the interviewer? Okay, so I think
If
I know.
you're the interviewer.
If I'm the interviewer, yeah, no, I definitely, as an interviewer, I have to familiarize myself with the topic. Otherwise, like, what are we doing, right? So it's like, I don't have to be the expert on it necessarily because I'm talking to the person as the expert, but I need to understand the space. I need to be able to move between questions. I will say, if you're the interviewer, it's okay to say, because your audience may not understand. So it's okay to say, hey, like, can you explain more to me about this thing? Because I really want to make sure I understand it. And I think a lot of our audience would like to too. And that's kind of a way to get, I don't want to say around it, but to kind of present it, because again, they're the expert, you're deferring to them. But I think it's important to have a basic understanding because, you know, you've seen, so we're in an era of news, right? Where people will be talking one to the other and somebody might say something crazy that's not actually true. Okay, like you've seen these situations and you're like screaming at your television like, whoa, like that's not actually accurate. If you've prepared for the interview as the interviewer, particularly if you are in journalism or media, so, you know, hey, if you guys are just starting out in your field, it is kind of important for you to prepare as much as you can, because then you can catch those kind of things. Or you can say like, actually, no, I just read the poll yesterday and it said this, or actually, you know, this thing that you said sounds a little confusing. Can you explain it more? Because then you can kind of catch inconsistencies and try to correct the record. But if you're just, you know, like doing it live on your channel, you want to have as much basic information as you can, because it's your brand too, right? So you have to look out for yourself in that moment, and also try to have a good experience for the person that you're interviewing. Interviews usually go better when you know a little bit. Like how you just said to me, you're like, people are usually scared or sometimes scared, right? And then that started us on a conversation. Like good interviews are conversations. So it helps if you know a little something.
That is so true. And like you said, before we started, you know, when we were having our little chat before we came on live, it's just like, look, it may go all the way left. So it's good for people to know that, you know, questions that you may prepare or have sent to people are just a guide, because like you said, it's a conversation. You never know where it may, you know, turn left or right. So I surely agree.
Yeah, now there are situations where it can go left and like not in a good way. So I don't know if you want to talk about that. Where you might go in expecting one thing and it's not great. You know, and you need to kind of know how to deal with that. I don't know if you have any questions related to that, or if you want me to just.
No, how do you handle that? Like, how do you bring it back if it goes all the way left?
I think
professionally, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's where it becomes important that you come in and you kind of know what points you want to hit, right? Like, especially, so it's gonna differ based on your situation, but let's say you're in a crisis communication situation, or let's say something bad happened and you're trying to make a point. Before the interview, ideally you wrote down, or, you know, I would say write down because I'm a writer, some points that you want to hit. And so, you know, it's actually okay. I'm not doing it now, but it's actually okay to like have your phone or something here and kind of like very quickly glance at it and, you know, remind yourself what you want to say. So you can kind of go back to your points. You can say politicians are really good at this, right? Like someone asked them a question like, hey, what do you think about Mondays? And they're like, well, Mondays are interesting, but what I really want to tell you about is Tuesdays, right? And it's like, if you spend some time watching politicians and how they kind of handle questions, and I've had to interview them before, right? So, you know, they are very good at the redirect. And there are ways to redirect. There are actually communication strategies that you can study. I won't get into it now in this interview because I just kind of looked at the time, but there are ways to redirect questions where you're not being defensive. You're just sticking to what you really want to cover. Now, that's not necessarily a fun experience for me as an interviewer, right? Or another interviewer. But again, now I have my interviewee hat on. You just want to be able to redirect calmly. Ideally, you're not reacting emotionally, right? So I will say that if someone asks you something that's a little bit crazy, ideally you can keep your composure. I think also it's very important to breathe. Just because someone asks you a question doesn't mean you have to answer it immediately, right? Let's say you don't know the answer, or let's say you need to compose your thoughts. It's totally okay to say, and you know, a great thing that everyone does, that's an interesting question, right? Like that buys you, that buys you some time to be like, how would I like to approach this, right?
Yeah.
So you can do that. Again, I'm going to go back to my Monday example. Someone comes to me and they're like, Leslie, oh my gosh, I heard that you hate Mondays and you really don't want to talk about Mondays because that's really, you got in trouble for talking about Mondays last time you were on the air. So you can say, you know, that's an interesting point. If you feel like you want to correct the misinformation, I mean, I would, you know, do it very calmly. And I can say, but you know what? While Mondays have their own charm, I think that it's really important for us to remember that the entire week has its own pluses and minuses. You know, like you just kind of redirect calmly without, you know, outbursts of emotion. And also remember too, I will kind of conclude with this because again, like I said, there are various strategies, but I will conclude with this. Just because someone asks you a question doesn't mean you have to answer it. So I just want to be clear on that. You are totally within your rights as someone being interviewed to say, and you hear this, right? You don't necessarily have to say no comment, but I mean, you could say, you know what, I'm not able to comment on that at this time, calmly. I will say another technique is that if you give someone a reason, it kind of can help. It doesn't have to be a big one, but it's just, you know, due to policy, I'm not able to comment on that at this time. You know, I'm not able to comment on that at this time. I'm really not comfortable with that. You know, you can say different things, but really end of the day, like it is your face, it is your brand, it is your story, and you do not have to answer everything that they ask you. Now, will there be consequences? That's another topic, right? Like, will you have to maybe deal with some fallout afterward? And sure, right? But in that moment, just remember you are not obligated to do that. And now I might have just messed up some interviews for myself. No, I'm just
like, what would you say?
No, I'm kidding. Because, you know, I interview people. Like I said at the top, I interview people all the time. So now people might be like, I don't actually have to answer that question. But no, I'm a cool interviewer, I think. So I don't want anyone to ever feel uncomfortable if I'm interviewing them. And so, yeah, just say, you know, hey, I'm not going to be able to answer that. I can tell you, right? Then you can offer something. I can't answer that, you know, that question that you have about Mondays. But what I can tell you is that, you know, our team is working very hard. You know what I mean? Like you just slightly pivot. Yeah. It's very easy to do if you can just keep your composure. And like I said, remember to breathe and remember the points that you had that you wanted to share.
Yeah. And all the examples that you gave in order to pivot were great. You know, it's just trying to, and I think the more that you practice them, because you never know what sometimes people are going to ask you. Like some people, like you said, are cool interviewers, but then some people, you know, may try to throw in, I got you, or whatever reason. And you, like you said, keeping your composure and just kind of like practicing and knowing how you can pivot with those things that you gave us, that you offered us. I think that will be great and you will be in a good position. So
thank you. And this, again, I know I've said this twice now, but this is really how the research at the beginning can kind of help you, right? And this is why if you're preparing for an on-camera interview as an interviewer, this is why it's also important to be aware of what your reputation is, right? Like, do you want to be that person who's like going for it, you know, whatever? Because I will tell you, like, I have questions for people, but it's kind of like if you ever watch Oprah do an interview, like Oprah will ask questions that we want to know and she's not afraid of it and I'm not either, but like there's a way to do it where it's not like crazy, right? Where it's not disrespectful. Like there's a way to set up a question and you can even do it like this. You could be like, okay, so I don't really personally want to ask you this, but you know, our readers want to know. Did you hate Monday as hard as they said you did? Because they've been asking us, right? And then it's like, then you've asked the question that you need to ask, but you didn't ask it in a crazy accusatory way that would turn off your person. So it's like, it's interesting. Like interviews are a lot of psychology, right? And a lot of like good communication practices and a lot of preparation. And if you ever notice too, what interviewers will sometimes do is ask the same question in different ways. So be aware of that if you're being interviewed, to be consistent with your answers, because somebody might ask you question A and then come around a couple minutes later and ask you question A plus, slightly different. And so just remember what you told them. And this is why it's important to have, you know, talking points that you want to cover and to really know the facts if you're acting as an expert.
Yeah, and for somebody to do that, they're really trying to catch you. And if you're listening and paying attention, you'll be like, what? Didn't you just ask me that in your head? Not say show it and be like, okay,
You know
I'm
what?
hip to that.
It's our jobs. It's like this is our jobs. Like we are out here trying to get information, not necessarily to be a gotcha, although there are some outlets that are known for that, right? But it's just you don't always have it as an interviewer. It's not always a great, happy interview for you, right? Like there's some pressure that can be involved depending on what you cover. Because, and I say this, I write about cryptocurrency, I write about health, personal finance. Like some of the stuff I've done interviews on, it's very life or death stuff, or it's stuff that has very serious consequences. So with those kind of interviews, you have a responsibility to the truth, first of all. You have a responsibility to your to your journalistic principles if you're acting as a journalist, to your audience. And so every interview isn't cotton candy, right? And so that's why I think, again, if you as the interviewee are prepared for that, just know it's not necessarily personal. I mean, it might be, but it's not necessarily personal. It's literally like our jobs to ask these questions. So like I said, if you prepare enough and you understand, if you're talking about a health topic, this really matters, this has consequences. Because another thing I'll say is, again, this is going to replay. Like you and I, our interview is going to be on YouTube. I have accepted that. And so when you're getting into some of these really serious topics, it is really important to be accurate and to be on message and to be able to answer those questions or ask the questions that are necessary.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you did say that, because in my field, I really don't have to do that. I don't have those hard interviews, but this is for women, our target audience is women over 40, and it runs the gamut, whatever they're going to talk about, so I'm so glad that you said that, because in so many instances, they may have to have that hard interview and they need to know that. So thank you for adding that piece.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there's so many people who work in business and are doing amazing things. And for example, if you work in business, it's not always good news. You work in communications, it's not always great, but you can do it. You tell the truth, you can do it if you prepare and really know your stuff.
Yeah.
So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So what about if you're having like an off day or off interview? How do you bring it back? And I just want to caveat that I had an off intro and I'm like, okay, Rosie, let me just answer first and then I'll let you do it, because we're human and so many people don't know how to bounce back from it. I always tell everybody, I am not perfect. You're not perfect. Just accept it. And I just put it out there, what is going on, Rosie? And then bring it on back and continue on. That's how I deal with it. But I wanted to ask you your approach to it.
Yeah, you know what? I think you handled it really well. And that's what I would do. And you can probably tell talking to me, like, I'm very, like, I make little jokes sometimes, like, not like cheesy jokes, but like how you were very, lighthearted about it. I'm lighthearted. So I was interviewing someone and I made a mistake about something. And I immediately was like, oh, shoot, you know what? That was not correct. let me, or actually, no, I think she corrected me. She was like, actually, no, I'm this. And I said, oh my gosh, you are so right. And I knew that. I was like, thank you so much. Right. I was like, thank you for letting me know. So back to the question. You're right. No one's perfect. And if you watch, local news, so I work on the written side, a lot of the time, but they mess up all the time. Right. Like, I shouldn't say all the time. They have situations where they misspeak, where they, cut too early. Like none of us are robots. And so I think what you did, like giving yourself grace, moving through it, I think that was great. And I also will say, if you do make a mistake in an interview, because back to that thing about, being on the record and being as accurate as possible. If you realize while you're talking that something isn't accurate, you can just say, wow, actually, no, correction. The 2010 figures said this. Let me, you correct it in the moment, because you want to do that for informational purposes. You want to do that so that it's not on the record as wrong, specifically if it's live, right? So if it's something that's recorded, I don't know, you might be able to cut it out or whatever, depending on what side of the camera you're on. But if it's live and you make a mistake, just correct it, as I don't want to say as unemotionally as possible, but really like as professionally and calmly as possible. Just say, actually, I meant to say this, and just keep going. Yeah. Like you did, like I did, like we do. Yeah.
Yes, I mess up a lot and I'm not ashamed of it. I just keep it moving. And that's what I like about, just me and the way I am, because I want to help women. That's the whole thing. A lot of women they're doing this for the first time. And I just want them to see that I don't care how long you've been doing this, you're going to make a mistake, and it should not paralyze you from, wanting to go live and talk about your business or whatever it is that, you have on your heart to speak about, because nobody is expecting perfection. And so I'm glad that we, kind of like pivot and talked about that, because I hope that helps someone, because just do it. Just do it. And like you said, there's so many things. If it's taped, you can, do some edits to get it right. If it's live, just correct it and keep moving, but go live and get your message out there.
Yeah. And to that point, I will say, and this is my journalism side, unfortunately, people do expect perfection. That's not going to say that they're going to get it. Right. But ideally, like if it's like a really serious topic with real consequences, ideally you get it as right as you can, right? Ideally, you're as accurate as you can. I will also say to this point, if you don't know, if you're in an interview and you're about to say something and you're not actually sure if it's accurate, don't say it. Or you can caveat and say, I'm paraphrasing this. This isn't actually what it says exactly, but this is what you want to couch it, because what you don't want to do is sit there and act like you're saying something. And then we come to find out, actually, no, that wasn't it. Mm-hmm. And there was one other thing I wanted to address. I love what you said about going live. I totally agree. Just do it. You don't have to save it. So if we're talking about social, you can just go live and let it go away. And then who's gonna know? Yes. Except the 7 people who tuned in, unless somebody was screen recording you, which, are you that important, girl? You need to do more. But no, just go ahead and do it. And I will say too, the more you do it, the easier it is.
Yes, I so agree. So how important is it to do a test run? Checking everything to make sure your software, or you have enough battery life, anything. How important is that?
Yeah, I think that's really important, especially if you haven't done it before. So I know that even if you test out your area, right? We didn't talk about this that much, but I was telling you, I like your background. Like, it's pretty cool. Even if you set up whatever, your filming situation, like test out your lighting. Like, even if you've never done it and you don't know how your makeup even is going to look under the lighting, like sit there and kind of see, like, okay, before it starts, like sit there and make sure that you're okay with how you're going to look on screen. Look at your lighting, look at your angles, make sure that you feel good about your microphone situation or not, make sure your audio is good. I think that's actually really important, because an on-camera interview by definition is on camera, very visual, and facts are facts. Look, it's not necessarily great, but people do judge credibility and things like that based on what they see. So you don't want to give anybody a reason to wonder, like, wait, what is she talking about? And this, like, if you ever see people and they're fidgeting a lot, or they're like looking all everywhere and they're not making, like, you're wondering, like, are you lying? Right. Like, it's, you're not looking like a credible source. So I would say also to practice speaking into the camera, like practice, can you do it? Can you sustain eye contact? Right? Because these kind of things do matter in an on-camera interview, and people will notice things, whether they consciously note it or not, right? Like, body language tells us things. Energy is real. I say this a lot. Energy is real. So make sure even that your energy is right before you sit down for the interview.
Yeah. And talking directly into the camera is such a good point that you made, because some people, especially if you're on your laptop, you don't know if you're looking at the camera or down at the screen, if you're doing the Zoom, it's just confusing. And I just recently actually upgraded mine, and now I have like a teleprompter type of setup, so you can look directly into the camera. But so it just depends. You just have to play with things And it just depends if you're serious or not. Some people may not want to do it because they're just testing it out and trying to see if, going live is something that I want to do. But I always tell people you only need 3 things to start out with, and then just start adding things on once you have committed to saying, this is what I'm going to do. And then you'll have your setup. But it's important to make that contact, that eye-to-eye contact, like you said, so you're not looking all off and crazy. So I agree.
Thank you. What are the 3 things that you tell them they should have? I love that you have a teleprompter. That's fancy, girl. Fancy. I might need to ask you. I don't have a teleprompter. I'm over here winging it. So what are the 3 things? Although there are apps, I will say, people who with phones will know, like there are apps that you can put on your phone and it'll like kind of run text for you. But yeah, what are the 3 things? I would love to know.
Yeah, so the 3 things is, one is your phone. Everyone has a smartphone. So if you have that, you're good to go. You don't have to invest in anything because everyone has a smartphone. You need an internet connection. So if you have that, and that not just basic either, because when COVID hit, I had to upgrade mine because everybody was on and it was just dropping, it was lagging. So it was just like, oh no, I need to call my service provider and make sure that I have, everything, proper, everything, I guess the bandwidth that I need to make sure that I can go live and sustain what I'm trying to do. And then the last one, your source, wherever you're going, as far as if it's YouTube, Facebook, whatever, make sure you have that app and you're good to go. The added thing I would say is lights, though. That's the additional thing. But some people, they may not have any funds for lights. So I'll just say, position yourself in front of a light, like your bedroom light, to make sure, or do it during the day so you have that natural light, and just go for it. Because again, sometimes you just have to try things out, to see if it works for you, and just do it, or just be outside and do it. Just talk about your day or whatever it is. Give a little snippet, but try it out. So those are like my 3 things.
I really like that. Those were such good points, because the worst thing is to be on an interview and then like the internet cuts out and it's like, wait, are you with us? Like, that would not be good. And I would add to the lights. It's amazing like how much of a difference a simple ring light can make. And I know that they're not that expensive anymore, right? So I think if you're going to be doing a lot of on-camera interviews, I think it's worth the investment. From a business perspective, like they can be like $30 or $40. But I totally take your point too. I agree about like natural lighting can work really well. So many considerations, right? For like something that might be 4 minutes long or 2 minutes long, or you know what I mean? Like everything, so this has been really nice to talk to you, but everything isn't 40 minutes. Everything isn't 30. Like sometimes you have to be able to make your point in a quick 30 seconds, right? And so there's still a lot of preparation that you have to put into it, no matter how long it is.
Yeah. And I always talk about like my first live moment was like on Fox 5 News, and you're just like, oh my God, like you can mess up, but it's just so much pressure that is on you. But I mean, you just have to, take deep breaths and just go. But yeah, so many people are just paralyzed. I keep saying that, but you just gotta step out there and do it.
No, I agree with you. You just got to start. And look, you might start a little messy, but hopefully if you've done your homework, you're not going to do anything crazy, right? That will like totally destroy what you've built, not to put even more pressure on it. I mean, look, I will say with that, it's really, I guess, as we wind down, it's really important to really be aware of what you're saying. Mm-hmm. So also in those high pressure situations, really be aware of, and again, I'm not trying to ruin interviews for myself in the future, but I'm just giving you the real. If you're speaking, let's say on behalf of an organization, like really be aware of what you can say that's public and maybe not public. Like really be aware of, the climate around you as much as you can. Like those situations can require a little bit more than like if you're just going on to talk about like your favorite issues. So that's important.
Yeah.
to know
Now,
your parameters.
yes. Now, what about clothing? Like some people are stickler for, wearing bright colors or solid colors, staying away from patterns. What's your take on what to
I
wear?
love that. And actually, I spent a little bit of time before this, speaking of preparation, watching your channel. And so I saw a little bit of the interview you did with someone on this. I would say, look, like in the past, like years ago, there were very specific, like never wear, like don't wear white. It's too bright. It's too reflective. It'll make you look crazy. Don't wear patterns. Like this was years ago. Now cameras are much better. So you even know when you watch the news, and I'm not saying you, Rosie, but like if you're watching this live, you even know when you're watching the news, like you'll see an anchor on in like some super fly, like houndstooth dress sometimes, and it looks fine, right? Because cameras have improved versus like 5 years ago or whatever. So I personally think that it's important to, if you're representing yourself or as a brand, your own brand or your brand, to just be in line with that, right? So if you are, for example, selling like chocolate chip cookies and, certain, I don't know, certain settings at the beach, then you don't necessarily want to like come up in like a fuzzy turtleneck sweater and like, I don't know, you just want to like be on brand with yourself. But also I would say make sure that you're comfortable, because what you don't want to do on camera is to be fidgeting with your clothes. You don't want to be like fidgeting with your bra. You don't want to be, like making sure that this didn't ride up too much, like, especially if it's a full camera shot, if they can see, for example, so this is fine, like we're only here. But if you're in a situation where you have, like, they can see your full body, like picture a late night show, like you want to be really cognizant of, okay, is anyone going to be able to see up my dress? Because you don't want that. You want to be really cognizant of, okay, how does this look when I sit down? Because you might look fabulous. We have seen dresses like this where it looks amazing while you're standing up, and then when you sit down, it's like, oh, okay,
It done turned into risque.
this is not what I thought it was. So you just want to, but this goes to testing, right? You want to put your outfit on and test it out and make sure that you're comfortable in it, that is showing exactly what you want to show. Look, I have no judgment. It's showing exactly what you want to show. It's your image. And that it ideally represents you and your brand. And also just be aware of the situation. So like if you're going on like a news program, that may not be the same for you as doing like a quick live, right? So just also think about the situation. And I know I said a lot, but I feel like you kind of know, right? Like I feel like here's a basic rule. I'll end on this. Just think when you put it on, because I do think you should try it on before you start, right? Like when you put it on, just think, do I feel comfortable in this? Do I feel like this is representative of the image that I want to show?
Yeah.
And if you are, and it does, then you're probably on the right track.
Yeah. And I so agree, test it out. That's what I always do because I love my prints and patterns and I want to wear them. So I always test it to see how is this looking? And if it's too busy or it's too much, then I'll, rethink it. But yeah, I like to push the boundary.
Yeah, you have a little pattern on now. This is cute. And honestly, a light can help with that. Like I did an interview with somebody, a celebrity actually, and she had on sequins and it was cute. And I was like, to the point where I was like, okay, you know what? I was like, I will be wearing sequins in my next interview, or I think. And so I did, and it was fine. Because the lighting kind of took care of it. So it really also has a lot to do, I think, with your lighting setup and how things kind of look for you.
Yeah. So to end this conversation, I would like to ask what's next and how can the audience stay in contact with you?
Oh, thank you. I love it. So I am Leslie Quander, my name at Leslie Quander everywhere. YouTube, I'm trying to be like you, posting little stuff here and there. Instagram at Leslie Quander, Twitter, Leslie Quander. You can find me on LinkedIn. Excuse me. And my website is lesliequander.com. So if you have questions for me about like my writing coaching services or success coaching, you can find me there. Also, I almost said, I was going to say, if you have a really good story, if you feel like I need to know about it, you could email me, but just that's a whole other topic because I also do teach people how to pitch, and there are very specific things that you need to do to have that done. But yeah, Leslie Quander everywhere. And what's next? I love, again, thank you for having me on. Thank you everyone for listening. I want to keep educating people on this stuff because I agree with you. I think it's so important for everybody to learn this stuff. But women, I want people to feel confident. Like I want people to know that they can and that this is possible. And I spend a lot of time on that, like just sharing information. As a writer, when I'm writing stuff, I just want to give you the facts and then you can use it to make whatever decision is best for you and your life. And so I'm going to keep doing that as long as I can and as long as I have the opportunity. So thank you for having me here.
Not a problem. Thank you so much again for being on the bandwidth.
Thank you.
So
it was a pleasure.
Not a problem. So if you guys have enjoyed this episode, please share it with one person that you know that could benefit from it. Also, comment your biggest takeaway. I would love to engage with you there. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. Again, click that thumbs up and hit that notification bell and follow us on Facebook and IG. And lastly, if you're ready to go live, I know I did share the 3, but still, if you didn't catch it, please subscribe and get the 3 must-have tools to go live. And we will see you next week on another episode of The Bandwidth. Bye-bye.